Stan, this is your latest Manchester United news. It's Sunday morning, which means we always have a lot in the papers to discuss, and it is a news show. I hope you're doing well, but a bit of positivity, a bit of pumping it up, I think, this morning, because you know what? There's so much negativity, and I spoke about this last night, the impact that these lockdowns and lack of games and everything will have on people's mental health is huge. But I choose to wake up this morning and look on the bright side. Be a bit positive. At the end of the day, it's Christmas in a week. I believe that I don't believe that this Omicron thing is going to actually be as bad as people think. I personally think they are hyping it up to try and stop it being as bad as it could be, and I don't think it will be that bad. I think we might have a little bit of short-term pain, but I think in a couple of weeks we'll be looking at this going, it's not been as bad, and I hope that's the case. I can't guarantee it, but I hope that's the case. So it just worries me when people are just getting scared and down, and I don't want that. I want people to try and, you should always try and find the positivity in things. So I hope everybody's feeling a little bit better this morning, a little bit of a bounce. We've got the forum tonight with I think Beth's on, Adam's on, maybe Ricky's on, I think Levin's on as well. So a bit of a proper football chat tonight on the show. But anyway, it's a news show this morning. Let's pump it up. And look, I want to talk about, Klopp's been talking about stuff. I mean, Jurgen Klopp's really interesting. I shouldn't like him because he's a Liverpool manager, but some of the stuff he comes out with, he reminds me of Sir Alex Ferguson 20 years ago. He really doesn't give a shit about saying what he thinks, and he's educated and intelligent as well. And he's basically come out with the line that unvaccinated players are a danger to us all. And there's more to it than that, but basically he's saying that, they've got to train separately, it's just causing chaos and something needs to happen. And it feeds into this rhetoric that we've been talking about for a week now. Why are Premier League games cancelled? Are they actually cancelled because people have got COVID, or are they actually cancelled because we're having to isolate players that are unvaccinated? And Jurgen Klopp, very much the forerunner of this. And I imagine Sir Alex, whichever way he would have gone, would have been the same as well. So we'll talk about that. Cavani, odds on to leave United now. Barcelona, I think we know this is coming. It's a little bit disappointing. Also, there's a weird Mbappe theory that he's going to come to Manchester United, which I think is total tosh, but we'll talk about that. But the first thing I want to talk about, Rangnick demands change. The reason I'm going to talk about this is because I think enough is enough. I woke up this morning and I had a few DMs from people saying, have you seen this tweet? And the tweet was basically some prat who's got hardly any followers, who uses my name for bloody retweets. People do it all the time. And basically the content of it was this. There's a clip of Andreas Pereira, right? Some of you might have seen it. There's a clip of Andreas Pereira sat there saying the greatest night of his night was the night in Paris where Rashford scored the goal, and he couldn't believe how Solskjaer just kept telling them everything that was going to happen. Even at half-time, hang in there and we'll get the goal, and we did. And basically somebody's took this clip, retweeted it and gone, something to the effect of, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is a good coach, but Goldbridge has got people convinced that he was just living off vibes. He's got a lot to answer for. And I was just like, at first I laughed and then I nearly cried. I was like, so basic, and it got a lot of interaction. There's a lot of people saying, oh, he's got a lot to answer for. I thought, look, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was in the job for 3 years. I backed him for 2 years and 9 months, as many of you know. Probably 10 months, actually, because only the Liverpool game when I was Ole out, right? So for one, I always said the PE teacher stuff was unfair. I was Ole out at the end, but whatever I think, whatever anybody else thinks, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer got the sack. Listen to this. He got the sack because he was crap. That's why he got the sack. He got humiliated by Watford 4-1, and they sacked him. And there were other results before that. It's got nothing to do with fans forcing him out. It's scary, the world we live in at times. We talk about the stuff we've been talking about, games being cancelled and what some people choose to believe and not believe. But it's scary what some of our fans believe about Solskjaer. He's been sacked. It's time to move on. Rangnick demands change. He is our manager now. We have turned our back on whatever that was. McKenna's gone. Carrick's gone. Solskjaer's gone. They're gone. Stop trying to rewrite history and stop trying to live in the past. What are you bringing my name into it for? I didn't even want Solskjaer to be sacked until 2 months before the end. I certainly wasn't there for 3 years saying kick him out of the job. But I was at the end because he was bloody useless and he got exposed. So why have we still got these Ole sexuals in the fan base talking about bloody Ole Gunnar Solskjaer? Andreas Pereira's clip is basically trying to convince people that the win in Paris was a tactical masterclass. It was a smash and grab. That's why we celebrated it so much. We were going out. Kim Bempe was doing some dance in the box, puts his hand up, we win a penalty, we score, we go through. Let's not pretend it was a tactical masterclass. It was jammy. It was jam on toast, and we loved it. But even if it was a tactical masterclass, it happened 2.5 years ago. How do people's brains work? How is that a relevant tweet that gets interaction today? Why are we talking about Solskjaer today? He's gone. He wasn't very good. He's gone. Move on. And I think really we desperately need to move on. We've got a new manager, and we might have a new manager after that in the summer. We've got players who have a reset. We've got to bury this whole Solskjaer conversation. He's gone. He wasn't good enough. Move on. Did we do it with Van Gaal? No. Did we do it with Mourinho? No. Why are we doing it? Why are we doing it? It almost seems to me like there's some people in our fan base that are somehow trying to find a win in a confirmed defeat. It's in the records. He got the sack. You cannot twist it around. I almost feel if Rangnick went and won the league, which is impossible and it can't happen this season, but I almost feel if Rangnick went and won the league, these people would tell you it's because of Solskjaer we've won the league. It's because of Solskjaer. Because he bought Ronaldo. I'm like, can we just please move on? I wish Ollie all the best. I wish Carrick all the best. I wish McKenna all the best. At the start of the season, I thought we were, I feel like at the start of the season, it was like, this could be a very special season. But it hasn't happened. For God's sake, move on. You are dragging us down into a conversation that nobody really needs to have. He's gone. Doesn't matter whether you think he was a good coach. Doesn't matter whether you think he was unlucky. Doesn't matter whether you think he was underrated. He lost 4-1 to Watford and he got the sack. End of story. End of conversation. And the great thing for me is Rangnick does demand change, because comparing Solskjaer's style of football to Rangnick's is really like comparing roadkill to a prime thoroughbred racehorse. They're just poles apart. Chalk and cheese. Whatever the contrast you want. Their style of football is ridiculously polars apart. It's North Pole, South Pole. The only similarities is a bit of snow. The only similarities, they're human. We've got to move on. It's not disrespectful to Ollie to move on. Ollie would want us to move on. We need to move on. Stop bringing up irrelevant bloody points from 3 years ago or 2 years ago. He got the sack like every manager gets the sack because you live in the now. You can't go back to PSG 2.5 years ago and say, we're so unlucky to lose Ollie. He was a genius and Andreas Pereira said so. It's like trusting Ronald McDonald with your cow, listening to Andres Pereira about how to play good football. I mean, I thought Pereira, again, I hoped Pereira was going to be a good player. But I ain't sitting listening to Andres Pereira tell us what a great tactical coach Solskjaer is. Because, to be honest, you live in the now. That was 2.5 years ago. Our evidence is Liverpool, Leicester, Man City and Watford. Humiliations. Bye-bye, let's move on. I don't understand. It does slightly irritate me that we're still having conversations about a manager that's been sacked, and quite rightly sacked. And as I said, it disappoints me because the great thing about doing this community is that everything's there on video. I can't sit here and say I was a genius. I can't sit here and say, well, I did tell you in April to sack Solskjaer, didn't I? I did say it. I didn't say it till Liverpool. A lot of you said sack him before. A lot of you said he was useless before. I didn't. I stuck by him for a long time. So I can't be that guy who goes, oh yeah, I was right for ages. I wasn't. I did say Ollie out just before we bought Bruno, but when he bought Bruno, I was like, I'll give him a chance. So we just got to move on. Brand new change. And I don't know. Good morning, Mark, says Akil. If we don't get top 4 this year and let alone winning a league, it's because of Ollie, but people aren't ready for that conversation. I would agree with that, Akil, but I'm very confident that we will get top 4. You know what I think it is at the moment? I think people are feeling a lot of pressure. They're feeling a lot of frustration, a lot of anxiety. And I think because Rangnick's the new manager, but it's been such a stops. I mean, he's basically had a week. He had the game against Palace, the Young Boys game, which was irrelevant, and then the win against Norwich, which wasn't very good. And now we've had 2 games cancelled. And I think the reason people are still wandering back to Solskjaer topics is because Rangnick is the coach, but it's been such a rubbish start for Rangnick. Not in relation to results. The results have been good, but we're not getting that fluidity, stability. I mean, people are saying that this break is good for Rangnick because it gives him time to implement his tactics. No, it doesn't. He's not training the team. It gives him time to assess and research and look at things, but it's not an ideal start. And I think what we need is the games back for many reasons, but we need the games back so we can really move on. The change is here. Yeah, the PSG game was good, but we went out in the next round, and having got us back in top 4, we bottled it as soon as they gave him the contract, says Glenn. And Joshua Bauer says, can we move on from Ollie now? Speaking of Pereira, have you heard if the team he's at are thinking of invoking the option to buy? I hope so, Joshua. I mean, look, in relation to Andres Pereira, I never thought I'd be mentioning him any time again, but he is a player that I thought was quite talented, but he's not, and we need to move him on. I don't get it. Why talking about Ollie a big deal? Kush, for some reason, if you want interaction and you're on Twitter, man, just say something about Ollie. It seems to do really well. I refuse. I just don't see the point in it. I really don't. I really, really don't. But look, I needed to get that off my chest because I just find it. There's some things I just find baffling, and as you know, in this community, we won't avoid the difficult conversations. Right, talking about avoiding the difficult conversations. Very interesting quotes from Jurgen Klopp. Actually, let's do Cavani first. So Cavani is. I mean, this story almost feels a bit repetitive, but it's Sunday morning, and you get different outlets talking about it. So Cavani to Barcelona is basically it's nailed on. Like the bookies, all the press around Spain and South America, even the English press are picking up on now. I haven't spoken to anybody I trust about it for probably a couple of days, but when I did a couple of days ago, they were like, "This is being pushed big time by Cavani and his agents." So it's about whether United can persuade him again. Now, we have persuaded him before. We persuaded him to stay last April when it looked like he was going to go. So I wouldn't say it's impossible for us to persuade Cavani to stay. But it's definitely being pushed at the moment, and the likelihood is that it will happen. What is the benefit to Manchester United is what I always look at. And I don't know what the benefit for Manchester United is to lose one striker, let alone 2 strikers in January, because there's talk of Martial going to Juventus on loan. There's talk of Cavani going to Barcelona. If they both go, then what is the benefit to Manchester United in January if we're not going to get a striker till the summer? I personally think, whatever you think about Cavani or whatever you think about Anthony Martial, we're better with both. I mean, look, we can already see the evidence. We've had 2 games cancelled. Newcastle might go next week. That's 3, which means Burnley after that could go. That's 4. That's 4 games. Like, that's more than 10% of your season. 4 games is more than 10%. You only play 38. 10% of 38 is 3.8. So if we get another 2 games cancelled, if Newcastle goes, Burnley will go. And maybe Wolves will go after that. So we could have 5 games postponed, which is more than 10% of your season games, which are going to have to fit into the business end of the season. What if there's another COVID outbreak? So Cavani and Martial, for me, are players that, all right, they might not be anywhere near the team at the moment, but it only takes a suspension, an injury, or another COVID outbreak, and you might need those players. So I don't see the benefit of Manchester United letting Cavani and Martial go in January unless they're bringing a striker in, which I don't think they will. So I would hope he stays, but he's pushing it, and United, probably quite rightly, in fact I saw somebody just say in the chat there, if he wants to go, let him go, and I do agree with that, but it doesn't leave us in a better position to lose a striker. I mean, people will talk about Alanga, and I agree, Alanga, I would like to see him getting more game time, but there's a world of difference between Cavani and Alanga. After a few months under Rangnick and the January transfer window, who's going to be the starting lineup against Atletico, says Wazza. I mean, well, we don't know at the moment, do we? There's so many permutations with that. But I do agree with Lincoln Designs. He says if Cavani goes, then definitely Martial stays. But of course, the issue is both are very clear and adamant that they want to go. Martial through his agent publicly, Cavani through what's going on through his agent in Barcelona. So they both want to go. I think that's the problem that Manchester United have got. Personally, I would like to keep them both until the summer. But I do agree with the point that if they're demanding to go, that they're a toxic element within the training ground, aren't they? Humish says, sorry, just put a bit of water there. Humish says, there are many rumours about Barcelona interested in Rashford and Greenwood is wanted by some clubs. How true is this? Absolutely horseshit, Humish. Absolute bollocks. Marcus Rashford will not be allowed to be sold, ever. He'll have to force a move, and I don't think he would do that. And Mason Greenwood the same. So, I don't think either of those players are at that point at the moment. If anything, United is changing for the better now. Players need to trust I hate to say the word, trust the process, but players need to give Rangnick and this change the time, and I think they'll see better development. I understand the frustration of any Man United player in the last 3 years. If they remove their loyalty to Solskjaer because he was a mate and actually look at the development of their career, it's been shocking. That will change. That will change in the next 3 weeks, let alone the last 3 years. So, these players won't be leaving United, I don't think. Mark, you're 100% on Ollie, and I agree with Klopp on player vaccinations. It hurts the game. They are professionals who need to stop being so scared and stop bullshitting around, says Iraqi. Let's play Donny as a striker, says Mikael Roach. So, let's just go back to that comment there. So, Jurgen Klopp has come out ahead of the game against Spurs this afternoon, which I'm going to be doing a watch-along for. Could be the last Premier League watch-along we do for a few weeks. So, join me on That's Football for that. I think it's a 4:30 kick-off. So basically, Jurgen Klopp has come out and been quite... I think, to be honest with you, I've said it for a while now that when Klopp first went to Liverpool, I just decided I didn't like him because he's managing Liverpool, and I'm sure a lot of you would agree with that. But I've got to say, over recent years, and I have said it a few times, if anybody reminds me of Sir Alex Ferguson in any way, and I'm not saying that they're identical, Klopp would be the manager that reminds me of Sir Alex Ferguson a bit, because he runs his club, he's listened to, the players listen to him, and he's got a personality where he just says what he thinks, and he's quite political about how he does things as well. He's quite educated. So Jurgen Klopp is somebody that, to be honest, begrudgingly I've admired for quite a while. I think the football that they play, the players that he's developed, his principles, and the way that he's turned Liverpool into what United were under Sir Alex at times, is to be respected, as begrudgingly as I say that. But the way he speaks, on this matter, I think he's ridiculously brave. I think there are so many people in the modern world who will say one thing and then say the other thing and sit on the fence. And Klopp clearly hasn't done that on this. He's basically come out and said, 99% of my squad is vaccinated because I've told them to get vaccinated, which Man United can't even get close to that, as can other clubs. They can't get close to that. And then he's come out and said in his interview that he won't be signing any players that are unvaccinated because it's too much of a risk, and that unvaccinated players are a danger to everybody else in the squad. They have to train separately, they have to eat separately. Something needs to be done about it. And he did go on to say it's their choice. They're not a danger on purpose. They're making a choice. But actually, in the professional sports arena, unvaccinated people are a danger to everybody else. So, look, it's a strong message, and I'm not saying I totally agree with it. That's not what I'm saying. It's a news story, isn't it? But it's a very strong message from one of the best managers in the world and one of the best managers in the Premier League. Where I do agree with it is it just gives us this clarity on something that the Premier League and Manchester United and other Premier League clubs don't want to give us. All week, we've had 2 games cancelled in a week, and we still don't have a bloody clue who's got COVID at United, how many people have got COVID at United, how many people are injured, and how many people are unvaccinated. A week after a game's been cancelled, 2 have been cancelled, and we are like mushrooms in a shed, in the dark, waiting for the door to be open and thrown shit on. We're just in the dark, fed on shit. And that is why I don't totally agree with what Klopp is saying, but I do agree with his forthright opinion in what he's talking about, because we're not getting the information that we need. And I firmly believe, and I think most people would agree with this, I firmly believe that the Premier League is having games cancelled because there's a large proportion of players that are unvaccinated. And not because they're, as I said, not because they're unvaccinated, that's their choice, but because they have to isolate. As soon as they train with somebody who's got COVID, they have to isolate, and it's depleting squads. And that's what Klopp means. And that's why Liverpool are playing today. They've got 3 people out with COVID, but they haven't got 4 or 5 other people unvaccinated. Liverpool would not be playing against Spurs today if they didn't have 99% of their squad vaccinated, because Van Dijk, Fabinho, Curtis Jones have got COVID, but the rest of the team do not have to isolate unless they test positive. But if they had 4 or 5 people unvaccinated, they'd have to isolate, which would mean they've got 8 players out and they probably wouldn't be able to play the game. So Liverpool are a prime example of how vaccination in the Premier League squad means you play games. Now, you might not like that. You might be anti-vax, you might be pro-vax, you might not like it. Oh, it's against their human rights, whatever. I get that. That's absolutely fine. But what I'm saying is, when presented with the facts, Liverpool are playing their game today because they don't need to worry about isolating players who aren't vaccinated. Therefore, 3 cases of COVID, no one else has got it, let's play ball. And they're the prime example of how the Premier League can work over the next 3 weeks. And we're the prime example of how the Premier League will go into lockdown over the next 3 weeks, because we can't provide what Liverpool can provide because we've got players who are unvaccinated. We need a rule change. That's what we need. And somebody said to me today, I think the NFL, don't quote me on this, but somebody said to me today, the NFL are thinking about changing the rule so that you only isolate if you've got a positive COVID test, and that's for vaccinated and unvaccinated, which I think is controversial in itself, but would certainly allow us to keep playing games. And I think it's a great point when you bring it back to the football that if we do lose another couple of games, 10% of our season needs to be rescheduled. 10% is quite a lot when you're in a very congested situation. So everyone who's going, let's lock the Premier League down, by the middle of January, and that's speculative to say that we would come back by then, you might have 6 or 7 games you've got to redo. You're getting on for 25% of your season then. So this is a real drama. Mark, fancy taking on Jake Paul, says Jack. I would never take on Jake Paul because I will not take a fall for money. I'm not a wrestler. And I don't believe in taking a dive so some prat can get the kudos, no matter how much money. I agree with Techers. Let's be respectful of each other's opinions. I would hope that would be the case in the UK, in this community anyway. I know some of you have very strong opinions one way or the other. I personally don't. I just give you the news and then give you an opinion. But please be respectful of each other because, mate, I've been watching boxing for 30 years. I haven't seen a takedown like that since Apollo Creed in Rocky IV. I mean, the way he fell forward like that and the way he dropped his arm and the way Jake Paul sort of pointed that he was going to do it. I mean, I might be completely wrong. It's all about opinion. But I think I've seen better acting in EastEnders. And the thing as well is when he went down, that if that was real, that's a serious knockout because his legs he just fell down like The Undertaker. Jake Paul just turns his back on him and goes to the corner. Like, if you've knocked someone down like that, as a boxer, you know boxing, you're a bit worried that you might have caused them serious damage. And even the people who came into the crowd were a little bit like, well, it was a bit tame. I think it was a total act. But some people want to believe it's real. It's like wrestling. Some people want to believe it's not real. I'll always say with these YouTubers, put them in the ring with a proper boxer. And if they beat a proper boxer, it's definitely staged because they wouldn't beat a proper boxer. Anyway, respect opinions. That's my opinion. You might have a different one. So, I've just got to bring you a story about Mbappe. Now, this is not anywhere of credible, but there is a bit of a theory going around social media that Manchester United might swoop in for Mbappe. I don't know where this is coming from. Well, I do, social media. I don't know why anybody would have this theory. Far more likely that we get Haaland than Mbappe. But Mbappe's going to Real Madrid. Like, he wanted to go to Real Madrid last summer. They've agreed it verbally that will happen. Kush says he doesn't think it was rigged. Look, I've been watching boxing for years, mate. Over 30 years. I've never seen a knockdown like that be reacted to like that. The acting for me was evident after the knockdown. If that was real, that's a serious knockdown. When a man goes down like that, forward, flops like that, you're thinking, fucking hell, there could be brain damage and anything. And he just turns to the corner and he's like, oh, it's all fine, because he knows it's rigged. So that's my opinion on it. Red Baron says, I can't respect anti-vaxxer opinions. It's like respecting flat earthers. Well, I disagree with that, Red Baron. But, everyone's entitled to their opinion. But I will use this platform to say that if you are thinking about not getting the vaccine or you're 50-50, please do go and get it. I can't tell you to do it, but please do go and get it, because what isn't in doubt is if you do get it, you do seriously reduce your chance of serious illness, and and that's got to be the most important thing. I'm thinking of you, but you've got to think about yourself. We as fans need to be united and give time to Rangnick. He has the tactics, but still needs to players who might play his style of football, says member Arch. Well, this is why I'm still very, very optimistic about the January transfer window. I do believe we'll bring a midfielder in, and I do think we'll move at least 2 players on, so I'm excited about that. In relation to Mbappe, let me just close that one off. He's going to Real Madrid. He's going to Real Madrid. Manchester United and Mbappe wouldn't make any sense. It's not. We don't need that profile of a player. I think we do need a striker, but we need a striker that's more like a Benzema. We need not Benzema, but the next Benzema. We need a striker who can score goals, but can also put a shift in for Ronaldo and allow Ronaldo to be the the goal scorer, really. In the front two, you need complement. I mean, I think about England, Beardsley and Lineker back in the 80s, Sheringham and Shearer, Cole and York. You need Hughes and Cantona. You need combinations in the front two. To me, there's no point having an Mbappe and a Haaland. They're not the same, but they are the same. Who's the grafter? Who's the creator? Who can also score goals? I think that Ronaldo almost needs a Cantona or a Rooney. Rooney and Ronaldo would be brilliant as a front two in this system. Prime, obviously. So that's the sort of striker we need. So Mbappe wouldn't make any sense. And also, he likes to drift wide. And if you've got a Greenwood and a Rashford, Mbappe wouldn't make any sense to us. And of course, it would be a sensational marquee signing, but we need to turn our back on that sort of thing. So it wouldn't happen anyway. Timo Werner is probably, you laugh, but Timo Werner is probably the sort of player that Rangnick would quite like. Obviously, formerly at Leipzig. You know what? I think that's a great point. Here's a great point for you. What would you do? Not would you take? What would you do if Ralf Rangnick brought Timo Werner to Manchester United? Would that make you go, fucking hell, he's worse than Ollie? Or would you trust him? Because I'd trust him. I actually thought before Werner went to Chelsea, I thought he was a really good signing. Haaland says, Smitty, I thought Werner to United before he went to Chelsea was a good signing. I thought he was going to be a good signing for Liverpool. And when Chelsea got him, I thought he's going to be really good. I think Timo Werner's problem is that he's been playing as a front one player in a team that doesn't suit him. And obviously his confidence is on the floor. I think if Rangnick wanted Werner and he played him next to Ronaldo, he's not quite the striker I would go with. I'd rather have a more physically robust player like Cavani. But he might work quite well. His link-up play is not terrible. So, you know what? If Rangnick did bring Werner to Manchester United and played him as a front two player, I'd trust Rangnick on that. I don't think we will do it, but I would trust him. And I do think he's a decent player. I just think he's had a difficult time at Chelsea. But, I think there's so many players that come to Premier League clubs and don't do well. And ultimately, I think if they'd gone to a different club, they might have done better. So let's see what happens. But I think we will bring a striker in, but I don't think it'll happen till the summer. I think the midfield is what we're going to be looking at in January. I think it just comes down to trust at the end of the day. I would trust Ralf Rangnick because that's what you need to do. I trusted Ollie. Trusted Ollie too long, really. Two and a half years I trusted Ollie. Mourinho, I gave him a good 2 and a bit years as well. Van Gaal, I think I nearly gave him 2 years. Moyes, I didn't give him 2 weeks, to be fair. But no, I would trust Rangnick. And I think that it's very interesting. Look, Arsenal are now 5 points ahead of us because they've played 2 more games. I'd rather have the points than the games in hand, to be honest. But they've had this issue with Aubameyang this week, and you've had people like Piers Morgan and other people saying it's a disgrace how he's been treated. But they've just gone and won 2, on paper, quite difficult games. West Ham at home and Leeds away, convincingly as well. Really played really, really well. Let the manager manage. Like, if Ralf Rangnick did something like that with Rashford or Bruno, I wouldn't like it, but I wouldn't be there going, it's a disgrace. He's a manager that you've got to let manage, and managers have got to be allowed to make their mistake. I always said it with Ollie and Harry Maguire. People used to say, oh, he's got to drop Harry Maguire. And I always said, look, maybe you're right. Maybe you are right. Maybe Maguire does need to be dropped, but he was never going to be dropped. It was going to be a line in the sand for Solskjaer that he was always going to pick Harry Maguire because Harry Maguire was his captain and he'd spent £80 million on him. And it was always going to be, you're going to die on that sword or you're going to lift that sword up and say, I am the master. Managers have to be allowed to manage. Arteta is not going to use Aubameyang, is he? And he'll either be successful or he won't. And it could be a reason he gets sacked, but let them manage. Ollie was always going to pick Harry Maguire and other players, and ultimately it cost him his job. And amongst other reasons, as we know. So if Rangnick did say, well, I don't think Bruno's good enough, I'm dropping him, I wouldn't like it, but I'd have to go with it because he's the manager. If we were accepting Rashford Ronaldo as a front two, which is what Rangnick has right now, surely Mbappe is a massive upgrade on Rashford, says Sid T. I'll be very surprised. Unless Rashford's game develops massively, I'll be very surprised if we stick with Rashford and Ronaldo as a front two. They don't complement each other. The chemistry's not there. They might be best mates off the pitch. But on the pitch, the chemistry's not there. They don't complement each other as footballers. And it's quite interesting because a few years ago, I got into a bit of an argument where somebody was likening Rashford. He was going through a good period, and somebody likened him to Ronaldo because he'd scored more goals than Ronaldo at that age. I think it was like 21. And I basically ridiculed it. I was probably a bit harsh. I said, you're having a laugh. Rashford's nowhere near the level of Ronaldo. And a few people took offence to it. But I suppose the basic point you would take from that argument is that they're similar players, even though Ronaldo's on a different level. They are similar flair players. Rashford wants to shoot a lot all the time, as does Ronaldo. Well, they're not going to work as a front two, because the front two, history will show you, has to complement each other. There has to be the goal scorer, and there has to be the creator. Doesn't mean the creator can't score goals, doesn't mean the goal scorer can't create goals, but there has to be roles. And at the moment, Rashford and Ronaldo don't complement each other. The first game under Rangnick was amazing for 75 minutes. Second game, about 30 minutes. The first thought that came to my mind was fatigue, says Architect. I don't think that this, I don't think that you can use fatigue as a valuable, as a valid argument for this side. Most of them had a week off in the last international break. We came back against Watford, they were shit, and we lost. Even under Rangnick, they had a week off when they didn't play the first team against Young Boys. The only way you could say fatigue is a problem is if Rangnick's training is so more intense than Ole's. I think mental fatigue is more likely in the fact that this season, I mean, we heard from Harry Maguire a few weeks ago, didn't we? I think when Carrick was in charge, and he said this is the lowest point of most of our club careers. I mean, he's been relegated quite a few times, hasn't he? And this season has been the lowest point of his career as a club career. So maybe some of the players are mentally fatigued. Look, I can't hide from the fact that a lot of these players loved Ole like he was their mate. So maybe that's damaged them a little bit as well. But as much as some people in our fan base, I think our players need a kick up the backside. Like, managers get sacked, and there is no doubt that this manager should have been sacked. It's not an injustice; he had to be sacked. If the players are suffering from a hangover mentally because of that, then they need to kick themselves up the arse, because this is football, and you are going to work harder and get better. But the things I've heard from the training ground is that the players are very excited about Rangnick. They know it's going to be a lot of hard work, but they're excited by it. So I think the real truth is that it's very difficult to go from 5 years, if you talk about Ole's period and Mourinho's period, it's very difficult to go from 5 years of slow, pragmatic, counter-attacking football to on the front pressing, attacking football in the space of a week or two. It will take time. It's like learning a different language, isn't it? You can't be fluent in French and then move to China and start speaking fluent Chinese within 2 weeks. They will be able to do it. They're intelligent, but it's going to take them a bit of time. And it isn't just the Ole period; it's the Mourinho period as well. They were very similar in the way they played football, and Rangnick's very different. So there's going to be teething problems. But I think we've just got to embrace the change, and I think January will be a big part of that. Architect says the energy levels required under Rangnick is 10 times higher compared to Ole. Even Fred is getting tired. We need changes each game. We've got to invest in that midfield. We must have investment in the midfield. But I think we're going to see massive improvement with people like Rashford and Greenwood and Shaw and Maguire and Fred and McTominay and Bruno. And Sancho, and most of that team is going to improve massively, because I really don't think they've had any tactical development for 3 years. So I think we're going to see a massive improvement. And what I expect to see very soon as well is that it's gone a bit quiet, and I imagine this does give Rangnick time, is that McKenna going probably wasn't expected. We need to bring in another coach now. So that gives Rangnick a bit of time to get some another coach in. I mean, that Jesse March is available. Surely that would be intriguing to him now. Carrick's gone, McKenna's gone, Phelan's basically gone anyway. Get another assistant coach in ASAP. So anyway, look, where do we move on from here? At the moment, I think Chelsea might be being cancelled today, but we have got Chelsea, Wolves, Man City, Newcastle and Liverpool against Spurs. I'm doing the watch along for Liverpool Spurs. Join me for that 4:15 on That's Football, and then we've got the 8 o'clock show tonight. I get players thrown at me when I say Rash and Scotty should be dropped. Pelters thrown at me. In any job, a new boss brings their own ways. They need to fight for the badge. There's nothing wrong with saying a player should be dropped. I don't know why people have a problem with that. That's just football opinion that's been around for decades, way before social media. Everyone's had their players that they think should and shouldn't play. There's no problem with that. But I do also think that under a new manager, some of these players should be getting the opportunity to impress, because it's a completely different manager, and I think they're going to get proper coaching now. So that's why I'm going to do it. But okay, like many things, you form your own opinions, don't you? Where are we at though? Today, watch along, Liverpool against Spurs, 8 o'clock show. Where are we as Manchester United at the moment? Are we going to be playing a game? I keep a close eye on Newcastle and what they're doing. I think Newcastle quite like the idea of getting a couple of games cancelled, and I think it's unfortunate that our next game is Newcastle, because I really do think that Newcastle would love to get a couple of games cancelled, because they're in a bad position, and if they can play more games with players signed in January, then it makes sense to them. So I'm not so worried about United. I think we will have players to play against Newcastle. I'm more worried about Newcastle saying they've got an outbreak, and we're still 8 days for them to have that happen. So I'm a little bit worried about that, but we'll see what happens. I think tomorrow people are probably hyping it up a little bit about Premier League shutdown. I feel a bit more positive today. I think that the amazing thing about the human psyche is that when something hits, it's like the end of the world, and then the longer you move away from that, people start to get used to it and start to think about other things. I think the Premier League have tried to get as many games on as they can. The problem is we don't know the situation. We don't know how many COVID cases there are at each club, and we don't know what the unvaccinated isolations are at each club. And if we did know that, I could probably sit here and say there's a big chance it's going to get locked down, there's a big chance it's going to carry on. I personally think there is still a good chance that this can be carried on if the Premier League has the appetite to do it, because there are no games after today in the Premier League until next Sunday. So it's a 7-day break. It's like a mini break anyway. And in 7 days, a lot of clubs will have players coming back who were already having to cancel games. And the protocols will be in place then. So I think the Premier League will have Boxing Day games. I can't guarantee United will play, because we still could have a problem with Newcastle. But I do think games will be played, and I think they can be played. I think what's happened to the Premier League clubs, in fairness, is that they've been caught on the hop. There's basically an admission that a year ago the protocols in place would have prevented what's happened in the last 2 weeks. But those protocols disappeared when we came out of lockdowns in the summer and we were going back to normal. So there's been an influx of COVID cases because Premier League clubs have not been behaving like they did a year ago. They will now start behaving like they did a year ago, and I think we'll have more games like we did a year ago. So I'm more positive that it's going to be fine. I can't guarantee that, but I choose to look at this latest wave, and I don't think it's going to be as bad as people think it's going to be. So I'm hopeful. Omicron is mild. South Africa hospitals are empty. Let the footy kick on, says Grant. And I'm worried this break is going to be used an excuse for the season the same way Ollie used it when we came back for Project Restart, says Aram. Well, we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, look, whatever you're doing, take care. George thinks we're definitely going into shutdown, so there you go. He's one of our moderators. Will you call my girlfriend Laura a bloody prat? She's watching live now. The game's being cancelled. It's terrible. Now Housewives will be on the telly, says JC. Is Desperate Housewives still even a series? I think he's talking about something else, actually. But look, we're back at 8 o'clock tonight. Interesting chat. Let's get the opinions of everybody else. Let's see what happens. Hopefully we're going to see a Premier League game between Liverpool and Spurs. It could be the last one for a while, so make sure you tune into That's Football for that. I'm looking forward to it. Spurs are another one, aren't they? Spurs are another club that are a threat for top four. So a draw, a good result, or do we just want Liverpool to lose? We will see. Let's see. Thanks everyone for watching. Smash a like on the video. Let's see if we can get 2,000 likes. Make sure you subscribe. Obviously United stands here with you no matter what. Your community to chat and feel part of something live. I'll speak to you all in a bit. Thanks for watching.